was struggling with their desk, and I was like, you know, if I truly respect this person, you know, I know that if I wish for others to respect me, I would want them to help me out. So I thought I'd just help her out with her desk, and she was, you know, just as I expected. It was her first day here, and you know, she was trying to figure out everything for the first time, and you know, just paying attention to her and listening to what she has to say, that's a really good way to show others respect, in my opinion. And it breaks down a lot of the barriers that we set up for each other in life. You know, we're all like, you know, especially today, we're divided into, you know, different groups, you know, freshman, sophomore, you know, even other more serious groups, and you know, we're all really just people. And you know, that's the main thing about respect is, you know, when we all have that equal playing field, we can respect other people. So another experience I had was, I was just getting on the bus, and you know, I noticed my driver, and I thought to myself, I was like, you know, most people don't pay attention to their bus driver, you know, people like that, they just take them for granted generally. So I thought I would observe them and listen to what they had to say. So, and I found out that he had the most interesting life. You know, through his life he had seen a lot of changes and different experiences he had that I would have never known about if I hadn't taken the time to pay attention to him and his life. And he'd grown up outside of LA, and he'd watched his small town become a really big city, and I was like, I would have never noticed. I would have never known if I hadn't just taken the time to listen to what he had to say. So that's were the good events that happened. I mean, you know, obviously there are times where you'll be walking around and people will be on their phones, or you know, looking elsewhere, listening to music. You know, they won't notice what you're trying to do, but ultimately I thought about it, I wouldn't even call that a bad or an ugly sort of event that happened, because the main thing about showing respect to others is it betters yourself. You are the one who is bettered by this. So even if they look at you funny, or you know, don't pay attention to you, you're really helping yourself break down some of the barriers that life may bring for us, and paying attention to others. So I can't really tell you any bad or ugly things that happened. So but sorry, I was just looking at the signal. So just, I would like to say that, you know, that's really important, to just pay attention to others. And like I said in the beginning, people may be busy, people maybe have a lot on their mind, so, Alright, so I'm closing. So just to take the time to pay attention to people and to listen to them, I think that is the best way to show respect and to find out about your audience and other people in your life. And thank you so much for your time.
Okay, stay up there for some feedback.
Alright.
We'll start. We'll start over here. Stay up front for some feedback.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Alright.
Oh, much better, yes. Okay, stand up, say your name, and say what you like.
Hi, my name is Brianna.
Hi, Brianna.
I really like how you spoke very clearly. You could tell that you were speaking.
Thank you.
Improvement will be the next person in the row.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
I don't think there was much to improve because you did really well, but
Thanks.
maybe hand signals,
Alright.
or like walking around a little bit to like just like keep your attention on you. I don't know.
Okay.
You did really well, so there's not much to
Thank you.
Yes, Laura, those are good suggestions. Well, Matthew. it's too late for Matthew, but not for the rest of you. When I asked for you to submit an outline form, I meant to show the Roman numerals in the heads.
Oh, okay.
And so if you didn't do that, write those in now so that they're clear. The Roman 1, 2. It's too late for me.
All right.
But not for the rest of you. That helps you remember that you needed. Okay, one more time. Wait. I'll wait for everybody to settle in. Okay, thank you. That will help you, as well as your audience, follow you more easily. So one of the things that we had in that intro thesis was I did an experiment, kind of an opening, observations or a poem or a quote or a story or even a joke. But then you need to somehow say in the opening lines, you need to give your audience a roadmap and say, I'm going to tell you about the good, the bad, the ugly, and what I learned.
Okay.
So we know what's coming. And when you get to those sections of your speech, you need to, with your voice, Matthew, highlight that narrative and say, so let's first go to the good. And you had a good example of helping a young person with her chair, I guess it was, and that was a positive thing, although we didn't really. One thing I want to say about you identified the way you were going to communicate respect was how?
To listen.
To be a more attentive listener.
Yes.
And I hope that didn't mean that you stopped repeating your mantra, because the mantra will not only cause you to be a better listener, but to open doors and to be a kinder person, to speak from the heart, and to do positive things for people. So I just wanted to clear that up, that it's not just enough to think listen, but to say the mantra, I respect you many, many times. The bus driver story was also a good story. It wasn't clear to me how you communicated the respect to him. I guess it was just with attentive listening and saying the mantra, I respect you. And so that was a positive and a good story. You could have, since you were running a little overtime, you could have shortened it a bit to get through it. On the bad and the ugly, you pointed out that you really didn't have one, and you really didn't consider people ignoring you as a very bad thing. It's more, and you rightly understood it's for your benefit to do this, to develop the habit of mind of repeating the mantra and thinking respect all the time. Yes, I agree. I would like to see you walk.
Okay.
You keep your thumbs in your pocket like that. Let them be loose. Shake out the tension right now. Shake out the tension, yeah. And just let them gesture at will as they will. And don't try to hold them firm at your side, but just let them be naturally gesturing up high, up low, and whatever they choose to do, let them be free. Yes. Secondly, I'd like to see you walk around. This will relax your tension, so you go good, 3 steps, bad, 5 steps that way, and ugly back to center. Okay. So we're going to walk during our body of our speech.
Okay.
All right? So let me see you walk 3 steps to the right. Okay, you did it wrong. Okay, go back to center.
I didn't know that, okay.
So the correct way to walk is you always lead with the foot in which direction you're going. So if you're going to go right, you lead with the right.
Okay.
That keeps you from crossing your foot.
Okay.
Second thing you did wrong was you never turn your back or side to the audience. You always keep it sheeted forward.
Okay.
So try it again. And 1, 2, 3. Better. Now let's see you go 5 that way with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A little weird at first. And come into the power stance when you come to the 5. Work this side of the room more and make good eye contact here. And then let's say you take 3 steps back to center. 1, 2, 3. You're back in the power center of the room. Very good. So overall, you did an excellent job. Just to work on those few things that I isolated. Thank you.
And a quick question, just I think for everybody too. So when we're writing our outlines, it's like not like paragraphs, just like straight out outlines. Like I'm going to talk about this, right?
Right.
I'm going to talk about this.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
And that's easier to remember. These paragraphs get so
Yeah.
dense you can't remember all the details in it. But if you break them down and do an outline form, it's much easier to remember that material. So,
Okay.
very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
There comes another. Oh, and I thought we had a volunteer. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, okay, good. Do we have another volunteer? Come on, Matthew broke the ice, so you see how simple it was. We're all doing this today.
Yeah, you got a couple.
Oh, I got a couple. Okay, come on down. Thank you so much. Let's hear it for the volunteer. Yeah, very good. Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry to bump into you. Okay, yeah. If you are, I'll have to adjust the camera accordingly. Okay, yes.
Heiress.
Like you're an heiress to the McDonnell Douglas fortune.
Yeah. That works.
Okay. Heiress stands before you, managing attention, looking around the room to make sure no one's on their phone or have their computer open. Relax your hands, shake them out, don't hold them together like that. Just let them be by your side. Communicate respect non-verbally. Look around the room and say to yourself, and really mean it, I respect my audience. Find friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name, feel the love, start your speech.
Okay, my name is Eris Penguin.
Hi, Eris.
Hey.
Okay, so when I think of respect, I think the first thing I think of is that first lesson we got when we were like 5 or 6, was that a person's a person, no matter how small. And Dr. Seuss tried to tell us, like when we were babies, about how important it is to treat each other equally, and even though we don't see it all the time, or we don't necessarily like someone we meet, that we need to respect them to a certain extent in our daily lives, just because it's demanded of us as humans. And when I think about this, I can think of some pretty specific stories, good ones, some neutral ones where nothing's really happened, and some pretty ugly ones, which I learned especially in, I think, my senior year of high school. Because, as we know, betrayal never comes from our enemies, and I think the biggest disrespect that we experienced is from the people that we found close to us. And I think it's taught me a lot, especially through this experiment, because when we talked about it last week, I didn't really think of it as much until, like Matthew said, we walk around school, we see people, their heads are buried in their phones, they don't really pay attention to each other, we're always on a fast track apparently, because with people our age, we always have somewhere to go, always have somewhere to be, and it's just, life is really fast for where we are right now in college. So I think the first good story I can think of is a lot of people use their parents as examples last week, where we say, like, we're really glad that our parents let us come here, that they let us get our education, that they listen to us when we have problems, and things like that. And that's the first story I can kind of think of, is that my parents let me come here. They trusted me to move away, even though I'm pretty close to home, and they just kind of listen to any problems I have, minor or major, that I've come across in my first year of college. And on top of that, I can think of, with this experiment, I decided to communicate respect non-verbally to all the activities I went to. I went to the activities fair, I went to different club informational meetings, and I just kind of walked around, I met people, and the main thing was to make eye contact, talk clearly, listen to them, be attentive. And on top of that, I thought in the back of my mind every time walking to class to just kind of keep my head out of my phone, kind of smile at people, be a little more friendly, and just try not to look like I didn't care about anyone else but myself. There were some neutral stories where if I sometimes forgot if I had to make a phone call on the way to class, or if I wasn't really paying attention to someone. They didn't really notice, because that's kind of how we are, we're kind of used to it, and we don't really notice things like that. But that's kind of, I guess, the bad level, because compared to the ugly level, it's a little more major, a little less significant. So I think if I would go to the dining hall with someone and I just wasn't paying attention, sometimes I wouldn't realize when the swiper would ask for my card, or I'd go to one of the club booths and I just kind of grab a flyer and not really talk to them. And those weren't really bad things. They were just kind of going about everyday life. Neither of us felt anything negative. We just kind of moved on. And then the more ugly story, I think, isn't from anything recent from the experiment, but it's more from my senior year, which was when I went through a really bad breakup, which I think we can all relate to. And a couple months later, there were rumors going around that I was saying really mean things about my best friend, who was the one who was helping me through the whole process. And she believed those rumors, and I think the biggest disrespect that I've ever experienced was from that a couple months ago, when she heard all those rumors. She didn't ask me about it. She just decided to believe what everyone else was saying and believe the worst about me. And that sent me I was really upset about it, and I think that was probably the ugliest story I can come up with when I was thinking about this summary, was that the biggest disrespect that we give to people are the people that we care about when we don't show them attention, when we don't listen to them, and if we just believe the worst about them without communicating with that. And that can go with your best friend or the simplest stranger on the street, and I think that's the ugliest experience I can think of. And because of that, I think that what I've learned from this is that respect goes a long way, because when you don't show it, people can take it to extremes, and we don't necessarily see that every day, but we definitely can think, oh, it is, yeah, we can definitely use it in a way that's good for all of us. I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, we're on the first row still. Thank you, sir.
I'm Justin.
Hi, Justin.
I think you did really well in not using filler words like and you just kept going.
That's an accomplishment, because the filler words can be distracting. Matt?
Me again?
No, I'm looking at it.
I just added the class yesterday, so I don't really know what's going on.
How do you think you can improve?
How do I think?
The speaker can improve.
I don't think it's possible.
Well, we have a start with this. We have a tradition in the class. You noticed you have them stand up and say your name.
Okay.
Introduce yourself.
Okay.
So do that.
So I'm Amar.
Hi, Amar.
Hi.
Here, we all know you now.
So I'm a senior history major. I'll be graduating this year, and I'm just taking this class just to complete the requirement for a minor.
Great. And how do you think she can improve?
I didn't find too many problems with it.
Okay.
So,
Great.
yeah.
All right, well, let me show you a few, Amar, so you can notice these. Harris, I liked your speech. You're a very likable person and speaker, and you're very fluent. I love the Dr. Zeus. A person's a person no matter how small. I just wish that, you know, we had more emphasis with your voice on the tie back as a person, no matter how small. I realize you were running out of time. I'm giving everyone 4 and then 15 seconds grace period, so you could have kind of finished out that and gotten your tie back in, but you did have the tie back right now, so it shows me you understand the concept. So that was good. Yeah, Dr. Aziz, one of my favorites is Yertle the Turtle. Yeah, that's there's a lot of Yertle the Turtles people on this campus in the Murphy Hall. Anyway, on the introduction, your introduction was good, and you got to your thesis preview, so you put that out there. I wish you would have just mentioned what I learned as part of your preview. So then you went to the good, and you found that this worked with your parents, and so that was positive, and you worked it with the clubs, and you did. I guess I just want to make sure you were in all the eye contact and nodding. You were also repeating the mantra, and you don't look long at a person. You don't stare. You just look and look away because they'll think you're stalking them, and it didn't seem that you had that problem, so that's good. On your I guess your I don't know if you didn't really have an ugly thing, but you sort of commented on the way people are so, you know, not looking at everybody and not paying attention much to people. So your what I learned, I thought, was well spoken, and just it got a little cut off in the end because you had to finish up. So, but you had all the elements here. Okay, and you see what you're doing with your finger now, the way you're pinching it in reassurance. You did that throughout your whole speech. Well, you'll watch it tonight on YouTube. You'll see that you pinched your finger for the entire speech. And you want to just let your hands be at your side, and because what that signifies was that you're anxious, and you need to transmit that anxiety into more energy with your voice and so forth, and you know, move it elsewhere rather than to your pinching yourself in reassurance. But Eris, you did a nice job other than that. Thank you. Okay, do we have another volunteer? Okay, everyone signed the sheet? Very good, thank you.
They passed me what I was
Okay, good. Okay, great, thank you. We love volunteers, yes.
Do you want me to say stop in 4 minutes or it's 15?
Well, just tell them 4, just say it's 4, and then they'll know they have 15 seconds.
Okay.
When he gives you 4 minutes, then you know you have 15 seconds left, okay? Sydney, move over that way a step so you're in the power center of the room. Thank you. Sydney stands before you, managing attention, communicating respect non-verbally, finding friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name, feel the love, start your speech.
Hi, I'm Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
So we all remember the awkward exchange last class when we had to look somebody in the eyes and say, I respect you. Now, whether it comes to day-to-day conversations, job interviews, or club recruiting, you always have to give respect. It's expected. But you don't always have to look them in the eyes and say, I respect you. You have to communicate this non-verbally. Whether it is just looking in the eye, nodding your head when they speak, it could be anything. But these non-verbal cues have to match your verbal cues. So what I did in these past few days, I've gone through club recruiting, I've had a staff training, I've gone through staff meetings. So one of the, I guess, the ugly part of showing respect to people is that it's not always reciprocated. I was talking to one of my supervisors on Sunday during a job training. Although I would look in the eye, give the respect like you're supposed to when you speak to one of the people in power above you, she didn't give this respect back to me. She would treat us as if we were little incompetent children, and you guys all know how that feels. So I just had to kind of take it in myself and be like, well, she's going to act this way to me, but that doesn't mean I have to act that way back to her. I still gave her the respect she needed. Mm-hmm. And then one of the better things, I'd not really say it's a bad thing, but it's kind of just neutral, is I was doing club recruiting for ACA, the Association of Chinese Americans. Right? And I was flyering people on Bruinwalk, and you guys all know how it feels to like be handed flyers and all that. But one of the girls came up to the table. Her name is Christy, actually. And she came up and asked us all about ACA, what we do, and what we do as a club. So I gave her that respect, and she was asking. I looked in the eye. I told her that like what we did, but at the same time, I wasn't straight out telling you, I respect you and I care about what you're saying. I told her that non-verbally by just looking her in the eyes, nodding my head, the same non-verbal cues that you do with everybody. It was a good outcome. She said she wanted to join. She's coming out to an orientation meeting on Wednesday, and I think that's pretty good. But it wasn't one of those scenes where it was like overly empowering, but just one of the things I think should be given. Like respect, I think, is something that you need to do every day to people you meet. You don't do that just to people in power. You don't do that just when you're in a job interview. It's just something that you should do to everyday people, like if you're in class, if you're sitting next to them, just having everyday conversation. But I think one of the most empowering things from this, what I've learned these past few days, is I had a job interview with the chief of staff of the supervisor of my home district. I want an internship, obviously, like a lot of people do, but I couldn't do one this semester, well, this quarter, because of all my class scheduling. But I went into the interview, I looked him in the eye, we had a good conversation about what I wanted to do in life, why I wanted to work for this office. And since he was obviously higher than me, he was the person interviewing me. I sat up straight in my chair, I looked him in the eye, had correct posture, and I really waited to see what he said. I wasn't cutting him off, I was waiting till he was done speaking, and then I would continue to answer all his questions. And he gave me the same respect back. And I think that's the best thing about like this nonverbal and verbal respect, is that if you give it to somebody, they should be giving it to you back. Because no one wants to treat someone with respect if they're not getting it back. So I think that's the most rewarding part. I walked out of that interview with having an internship lined up for next quarter and a job lined up for the 2020 election, hopefully. So that was a good thing. But what I learned overall from this experiment was that even if you don't get this respect reciprocated back, it's common courtesy to always just give it to somebody else. Because you never know if they're going to have a bad day or what they're feeling inside. So if you hold yourself to that standard by always giving everyone respect, you will get that back at some point. I think that's the most important thing of all. But when you're sitting in class, if you're walking on Bruinwalk, sometimes you just need to look up if you're eating with people and just be like, get off your phone, take out your headphones, and give them all the respect they deserve. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Sydney. Okay, where are we? We are here. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, you know, I'm Matthew. So.
Hi, Matthew.
I really enjoyed your speech. I thought you knew what you were talking about, and you had clear points where you were going, so it was very easy for us to follow you, and I like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Matthew. Improvement?
That was really good.
Name?
Eris.
Hi, Eris.
You had good hand movements, which I think was really important because, like you said, act legit. So it was nice to know you're confident. I'm thinking something more anecdotal, maybe something like when I'm a speech, something more personal rather than strictly like the job interviews and the interviews with like the girl you're talking about, or something maybe like within your family or friends that happens.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair. That's a fair comment, and that would have probably been more compelling if she had done so. You started with an allusion to the very quick introduction we had to respect and the awkwardness that was involved in saying to a fellow classmate, I respect you. And of course the instructions were not just to say I respect you, but to mean what you say and say what you mean. But it was very difficult because people had never done this before and they were giddy and laughing and other things, so it was hard to get the tone and tenor I was looking for the instructions going. But be that as it may, you did allude to something that the whole class had experienced, and that was a good way to start your speech. I liked all your observations about respect and what you talked about. I would have liked a little bit better preview with your voice to lay out a roadmap of what you're going to do. So today I'm going to tell you about the good, the bad, the ugly, and what I learned. You know, we can't miss that. So, you know, right? It's different. And you switched the order, which was fine, so you would have said the ugly, the bad, and the good, and you keep that consistent. So you opened with the ugly. And you talked about, I guess, your supervisor or the head supervisor who was very condescending and felt she was talking down to the masses and really clearly hasn't had a class in public speaking and respect, and I think probably many people picked up on this. I know you did, and I assume you were at the time trying to say I respect you and give her respect, but it wasn't working. She was in the I'm going to talk down to you mode, and you weren't going to penetrate that apparently, and apparently you did not, right? You want to have a little transition between the bad and between the ugly and the bad, so you might want to say, so that was the ugly. Now let me tell you about something that was kind of baddish, or you said okay-ish. So you were kind of drawing straws. I thought it was an excellent story. I thought it was actually good. Flyering on Bruin Walk, and you practicing it the whole time she was talking and you were talking, and she picked it up and she decided to join. That's a miracle on Bruin Walk. Usually you get your flyers thrown on the ground or in your face or other epitaphs directed at you. Get the heck out of my way, right? Yeah. So that was, I thought that was a pretty good story, but you didn't. On the your good story, you talked about being interviewed with the district supervisor's chief of staff and being unable to accept the job now, but you play the respect issue with him and gave him respect, sat straight up, listened politely and carefully to what he said. You didn't interrupt. You seemed like a respectful person. You know, a piece of what, when people are working with job interviewees and stuff, they try to envision, could I see myself working with this person day in and day out? Could I see myself asking this person to do this and do that? And if they can't see that, then you're doomed. You are. And so respect can go a long way toward them liking you and not trying so hard to be liked, but just liking you because they respect you and they sense you respect them. So you got a job or an internship for the next quarter and maybe something with the campaign. So that's great news. And so I think that this is very good news, and if I were you, I would practice this respect day and night, getting the kind of results you're getting. What I learned, you said, little gestures can go a long way, and I hope you do. You mean that. You don't stare at people for a long time when you say, I respect you, say, I respect you, and look away. It's not the head nod and the flick of the wrist are very exceptionally done, not done at all, really don't need to be done. I like your summary of how you tied in all the things that you talked about. And then your tie back, well, I don't know. I guess it was sort of a tie back, but it could have been better, could have been stronger. So overall, you did a good job. You're a very likable speaker, and you communicated the results of the experiment positively and effectively. Thank you. Do we have another volunteer? I'm sure this has caused many people to want to volunteer. Excellent. Volunteering twice in one day. Very good. Okay, Natalie stands before you, managing the tension, communicating respect, finding friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name, feel the love. Oh, undo your hands.
Right.
Feet wider than your shoulders, wider. Good. So you're in the power stance, so you can't sway. It's like the analogy I use is like a tripod.
Okay.
Tripod can't
Like
be tipped over, right? Like a tripod. You see, it's very firm, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Say your name, feel the love. Start your speech.
All right. Hi, I'm Natalie.
Hi, Natalie.
So something we all know is that everyone craves esteem, whether it be from our family, our friends, people we know, people we don't know. But bottom line is we all want validation. So validation is basically a byproduct of respect. Respecting can come in many ways. It may be verbal, it may be nonverbal. But in this experiment, I plan to discuss the good, bad, and ugly reactions on an experiment on nonverbal respect. So to start, I want to talk about the good reactions. There was probably more good than bad reactions, but definitely one thing that happened was in my Linguistics 1 class, I decided, okay, I'm going to hold open the door for everybody who walks in, and I'm going to smile at them as they walk through. This was a nonverbal communication type of respect where I just showed people by my actions that I wanted to help them, that I wanted to respect them. So most of the time it was advantageous because everybody who walked through the door either muttered a thank you or they smiled politely back. So the cool thing is that showing them this nonverbal respect allowed me to receive nonverbal respect as well. It was nice that you felt like somebody else wanted to make your day as well as you wanting to make theirs. The same type of thing happened in my poli-sci class. That was definitely a bigger lecture class, so we had more students. I noticed that whenever a student spoke or the professor spoke, most students were looking down at their laptop or on their phones. So for me, I attempted to make eye contact with the speaker and let them know that I was listening to them, that I heard them for what they were saying, whether I agreed with it or not. By doing so, I noticed that the speakers became more concise, and I felt that they really knew what they were talking about, that they were passionate about what they were talking about. Maybe not everybody was listening to them, but one person was, and one person made all the difference. When I looked away, I noticed that suddenly the speaker felt less listened to, that they felt like they didn't care as much because who was listening to them in the first place. So those were definitely two of the good reactions I had. A little bit onto the bad reactions. We had more bad reactions when I noticed that in a small one-on-one class, our professor wanted us to work with a partner and discuss the previous night's reading. Now, you would think that by sitting one-on-one with a student, facing them, you would have this type of reaction where you both would be listening to each other, both making eye contact. But the more eye contact they made with the student when they were trying to speak to me, the more they tended to look away. Their eyes started to dart to different points in the room because they felt uncomfortable or weren't used to this one-on-one respect. This, in a way, saddened me because to think about that somebody's so not used to one-on-one respect that they can't make eye contact for about 5 minutes or less is almost astounding. So that was more of a bad reaction. Another bad reaction was just in those smaller classes again, where you made eye contact with the speaker and they weren't used to it. It's just out of habit that we can't accept sometimes the respect that we're given because it's not something that's given in daily life. We're constantly distracted by technology, by our computers, by social media, things that we're looking at online. We can make eye contact with a person on a phone, looking at their pictures, but we can't make eye contact with them in real life. Part of the ugly reactions, I wouldn't say they were terrible, but I remember one of my roommates came home and we were talking about her Dance 1 class. She was talking about how the teacher was having her do these like crazy exercises, and I was making eye contact with her and nodding the whole time that she was speaking when it was needed or necessary. I remember her calling me out and be like, "Natalie, what exactly are you doing? Like, why are you looking at me?" So instead of saying anything to her, I just decided to apologize, and instead I started looking at my phone while she was talking to me. Because we were having such a close one-on-one conversation, and she couldn't handle the respect that I was giving her, it was easier for her to just not make eye contact with me. Her speech started going faster, she started being able to speak clearly, and the conversation ended faster. It was really interesting to me that because she wasn't used to this respect, it was almost habit for her to just not be listened to. So I think what I learned from this is that you really need to pay attention to people when they were speaking, but because of technology, we're not used to it in this day and age, and I think that the reactions can be good, bad, and ugly, but overall, it's just habit that we're used to technology and not normal speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. What was the time?
Oh, it's 4:15.
4:15, perfect. Okay, we're in this row, maybe? Yes, sir.
Bailey.
Hi, Bailey.
I really liked your introduction and stories, and you had a lot of confidence with your school.
Next, improvement.
Hello everyone, my name is Roberto.
Hi, Roberto.
And I really liked your voice, like it was very loud, like it was directed over the room, and you spoke very clearly.
Natalie, yes, I like your speech, and I like that you incorporated some of the things that I talk to other students about. Relax your hand, let it be by your side. And that was heartful to see because it shows you're listening to other people's critique and trying to incorporate them and not just saying, okay, someone else is being critiqued, I can text or daydream. You started with a very profound comment when you said everyone craves esteem, whether it be one's family, friend, teachers, co-worker, even those that are unknown. That is just so true. And if you can remember that, and remember that when you're doing your mantra and dealing with people, you'll be a long way toward giving that esteem and being thought of as worthy and popular and likable. You had a good thesis preview. You told us that you were going to do the good, the bad, the ugly, and some of what you learned. It was good. On the good, you said you held open the door, and most people said thank you or nodded, and I'm glad you didn't focus upon the few with bad manners that just walked through and looked at the sky or something. I've had that happen, I'm sure we all have, but that shouldn't dissuade you from doing this even when that happens. You said you don't want to come off as creepy by telling someone to lean on. I didn't really understand what you were getting at with that. But in any case, I liked your situation in poli-sci where you decided to be an attentive and respectful speaker. And you noticed that this was helpful to the speaker and to you, and so it wasn't just people going, oh, here comes the question, time to text, time to go watch some porn, So that was a good thing you did to help your fellow classmates. I don't know if your professor noticed it or not, but it was good. And you thought they were more concise. Now, on the bad, you talked about, was it Comm 101, I guess it was, and you said that your partner, we were told to sit face to face, and you looked him in the eye, and he couldn't look you in the eye, which is kind of sad, because if he ever goes for a job interview, he's never going to be hired, because, you know, one of the rules of thumb is if a person can't look you in the eye, they're shifty or they're hiding something. So I hope he gets over that, you know. Anyway, he refused to make eye contact with you, and you said this seemed to happen to most people in the class, which was kind of interesting. I don't know if the professor had a method to his madness, or this was part of a drill or an experiment that he talked about later. But you can find yourself when there's a discomfort. You can always adjust. You don't have to keep it up, you know. On the ugly, yes, you were paying attention, and your partner, or your friend Natalie, or your friend was, what's your friend's name?
My roommate Megan.
Megan was freaked out that you were actually looking at her and paying attention
like, in
to
the
her.
room, it's just like, we just like do our own thing and like we talk, but like we're never like looking at each other.
Yeah, and that's really rude. And she was spooked by this, and so then you decided to adapt and get off the looking in the eye, listening mode, and just pretend to be on your phone so she would be more comfortable. Which was kind of an interesting story, really. As for what you learned, I liked the comments that you made. I thought they were very thoughtful and insightful, so that was good. Yeah, and your conclusion about the distractions of technology sucking us all away and sucking away our attention is good. I was hoping to hear something about, you know, esteem, you know, and stressed with your voice in the final thing, and just saying, hey, I've learned a great way to give esteem, which is to repeat my mantra as I walk around this earth for the next 90 years. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
And next, how's our time going here? Yeah, we got plenty of time. Have another volunteer? Yeah, here we go, right here. Yeah.
I'll go.
Oh, what a wise decision. Are you picking up the idea of what the assignment was? Yeah. Good. Okay. I'll talk to the people that just enrolled. We'll take a little time at the end of the class. We'll quit early and I'll talk to them. Sydney stands before you managing attention, communicating respect non-verbally, finding friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name, feel the love, say your speech.
Hi, I'm the other Sydney in the class.
Hi, Sydney.
So, respect. It's something we've all been instilled since we were children. It's pleases, it's thank yous, it's looking people in the eye, it's shaking hands, hugging our relatives. So when tasked with this experiment, I was interested to find out how that changes as we grow older. Because what I've noticed is that as people grow older, we become more passive with respect rather than consciously saying, I respect you in our minds. We've been more passive with that. So I will tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly from this experiment and what I've learned. First, the good. So last week I've been part of formal recruitment for a sorority, talking to all of these women about each of their chapters. And I have been practicing that respect all week, smiling, making eye contact, making sure they're heard, and asking questions about what they're passionate about. So after tasked with this assignment on Thursday and Friday, they were talking about their philanthropy and what they do to make the world a better place. And when I smiled and asked questions at them, and when they told me all about their philanthropy and how they were making a change, you could see that it just made their day to know that somebody was interested in that, and that somebody respected their chapter enough to ask about that and nod along and clap when we agreed with something. So that was the good. Despite the good, there was some bad. I made sure when I walked to class to take my earbuds out, keep my head up, and be more present in the world, and to try to look at people and smile at people. But what I did notice was that people didn't really do that. Most people just put their earbuds in and looked down at the ground. And it wasn't really a specific incident that was bad, it was just an overall kind of indifference of people, ignorance of people, and an almost discomfort that people have with like looking at other people. But I did have an ugly experience. So like a lot of people, I went to the football game on Saturday, my first football game, and when we got there, me and my roommate, it was a little crowded. And we couldn't really find a place to sit. So when we saw an opening, we went over and asked some ladies if we could sit next to them. And what I got in return was an eye roll and a look up and down and raised eyebrows. I did smile, I made eye contact, I asked her all of that kind of thing, still met with blatant disrespect. I was a little taken aback by it. So we decided to go sit somewhere else, and I didn't let that deter me from enjoying my first game. So after I told you the good, the bad, and the ugly, I will tell you what I've learned from it. I learned that despite the amount of respect you give somebody, despite what you can do to make somebody feel comfortable, there will always be someone who's indifferent, someone who is just having a bad day or in a bad mood maybe, or somebody who is just ignorant to your respect. But what I've also learned is that the vast majority of experiences I've had from this experiment were positive. A lot of people will give you that respect. A lot of people will be compassionate. It reminded me that people are courteous and kind and good innately, and that most people just want to make connections. And from that childhood of wanting to say pleases and thank yous and learning about other people, it reminded me to stay conscious of the fact that I want to respect others. It reminded me to not be passive about respecting others.
Thank you. Very nice. Okay, where are we? Thank you for waiting respectfully at the door and not interrupting Sydney's speech. Here, yes, we're here.
Cool. I'm Kyler.
Hi, Kyler.
I liked your stories. I liked the initial part, how you kind of did a nice overview. You had enough time to come back to the conclusion. You had enough time to do a little wind down, a little wrap up. So that was pretty good. Thank you.
Okay, improvement.
Hi. Hi, my name is Olivia.
Hi, Olivia.
So I think overall you did really well. Like everything was very well structured. I would say maybe my only note was you kind of didn't move around at all. Like you had really great hand motions. But yeah, I think maybe a little movement would have made it feel more natural.
Yeah, let's start with that. Can we, Sydney? Let's see you move 3 times and do it while you're talking. So tell us about your morning.
My morning.
And walk first to the right 3 steps and then back to the...
Well, I started with a 10 a.m. mythology discussion, and then after that mythology discussion, I went back because I forgot food in between classes, and then I came here.
Okay. Now, okay. If you notice, you didn't come back to center, you're a little left of center. And you didn't go far enough to the left, and when you're over in the left, you're supposed to look over at them and work that side of the audience. But you got the idea, at least you cheated forward, and you did a nice job with the walking. You define respect operationally as please, thank you, and nodding. And you talked about the fact that and down they forget as up they grew, to quote E. Cummings. You know, if we sort of lose it or forget it, and it goes away. And where did that go? I don't know, but it's gone. And you then had a good preview, thesis preview, which you told us, you know, the 3 things you were going to do and what you learned. So that was excellent. As for the good, you told us about being involved in Rush Week, and you asked questions about philanthropy, and that was positive. And that made people say, relax your hand, let them be by your side if you can. And that was positive. People seemed to like that. Like that you keyed into that and you were interested in that. On the bad, yes, people are looking at their phones and listening to earbuds and not particularly interested in seeing what you're doing or what's going on in the world. But remember, this is for your benefit to repeat the mantra, so you develop the habit of giving off respectful vibrations. On the ugly, the football game, I guess the woman or man or whoever it was thought you were trying to get a better seat than you paid for, and she was trying to non-verbally be unfriendly so you wouldn't sit down there. Is that basically what happened?
Kinda. I don't know. It was pretty crowded, so.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. But did you get other seats somewhere? And
it was just in the den, so.
It was in the den. I see. Yeah, whatever that means. Okay, good. Your conclusion. You had a good summary in there that you worked into the conclusion, which I like. And you worked into it what you learned, and then you tied back nicely to your childhood of manners and that sort of thing. So I thought this was a well-structured and well-delivered speech. So good job, Sydney, too. I noticed you gave me both a essay form and an outline form. That's fine. I wanted the outline form, so that's fine. Yeah. Okay, what's our time looking like? We have time for one more. Come on, volunteer, yeah, excellent, let's hear it. Yeah. You need to borrow the green meanie, okay. Well, what's that, a staple? Well, that can't be. By the way, when there's a delay, when you're up there in front, don't get self-conscious. Go to this fellow in the front row and say, so how was your weekend? Did you party? And make a connection with your audience so you're not, so you bond with your audience so you're not just sitting up there alone. So let's see you talk to him. What's up? Yeah, that's good.
Did you go to the game?
No, I didn't. I don't have a den pass.
You don't have a den card? Is that what it takes?
You gotta pay some money. So what time is
Good word. Okay, Oriana, is that right? Oriana stands before us in the power stance. Take your hands off your hips. A little aggressive. Shake your hands out. Managing attention. Communicating respect. Oh, by the way, you look very nice in black on white. Please try to remember, if you're speaking, don't wear white to class. You fade into the white screen. We can't see you. Oh wait, we have to do something.